Welcome back to the OMB Law Board. I'm Simon Bennett, and today I've got family law partner at OMB, Aleena. Welcome.
Hi, Simon. Thanks for having me.
First podcast for you.
Yes, ever.
How exciting. And we're so glad to have you on the podcast and as our newly appointed family law partner here at OMB. So thank you so much for coming today.
Thanks for having me.
Okay. I want to talk to you about a really important issue, a bit of a developing area of family law, and it is coercive control.
Big ticket item at the moment. Yeah. And something that in the last probably 6 to 12 months has become a real big point socially, I guess, to talk about, and that's because there's been some movements.
And has there been a new case? Has there been some change in legislation? What's made it such a new hot topic, if you like?
Well, generally there's been some changes, I think, across family law, even the criminal law world, and domestic violence. But yeah, so our Family Law Act was amended last year, or the changes came into effect last year, which included coercive control within the definition of what family violence is. That has, once those amendments came into effect, there's been some decisions that have been handed down which have applied those new definitions of family violence, which are really, really important in parenting matters.
So if you want to know about coercive control, stick with us as we drill down into the latest developments in family law and coercive control. So Aleena, can we start at the beginning? Can you tell us what is coercive control? I don't understand.
Yeah, it's a bit of an ambiguous phrase, I guess. But coercive control, unlike sort of physical violence, is a pattern of behaviour that would cause a family member to feel threatened for their safety or to feel concerned for their safety. So there's a number of things that could be, and it really does depend, I think, on the individual couple and the family, because every family is unique. But I think there's a broad range of behaviours that are generally considered threatening. So things like actual threats, isolating a family member from their own family and friends, exerting control over them and intimidating them, things like involving the children in that, where children might be in the care of the other parent, removing that child from that parent's care as a bit of a weapon.
Right.
There's a whole range of behaviours that factor in, but essentially they all sort of combine into the one idea of coercive control.
And is it a course of conduct usually, or can it be a single individual event? Or
it can be both, but It's typically a course of conduct. So there was a recent full court decision of Takanaka, if I've got that right, Takanaka and Maddox, and the court actually used that term. They said it was a 4-year campaign of a course of conduct by the father in that matter, which eventually the court found was to be coercively controlling behaviour. And that was in the time between separation and the court trial. So post-separation, this person had engaged in all sorts of behaviour, even using systems abuse, so things like hospitals and doctors and schools. And he was actually reporting this mother to each of those organisations and saying that she was mentally unwell. That the court said, combined with his other behaviours, amounted to coercive control.
So it's really broadened the scope that a court can look at as to behaviours of one of the parties to the relationship about a course of conduct that might individually not seem that serious, but as a group,
Correct.
It really has effect on someone.
Absolutely. And the court's primary concern in parenting matters is the effect of that on the child. And also now, because we're talking family violence, the other carer, the child's other carer, because that has a flow-on effect to the child. And the court's paramount consideration is to protect that child from any risk of harm. So where a court makes a finding of coercive control, we are looking at a big red flag for the court in terms of that person's insight into their behaviour and the effect of that on the child. And the court really has to consider that in making any parenting orders.
And of course, as we know, harm is not only physical, it can be mental and social.
Absolutely.
And
verbal and financial, emotional. Absolutely.
And that's one that you would see a bit, I guess, is the use of financial control, often by the breadwinner, with the one who controls the funds against the partner.
Absolutely,
to elicit control. If you don't do this, you won't get any money, you can't go, you can't leave the relationship, you don't have the money.
That's right. So they are isolating that person from being able to live independently, exit the relationship with the child. It becomes about control. And the court says, if you're so fixated on that control element, especially with the other party, how can you appropriately care for your child? How can you put that child's needs first? So it's a big red flag for courts.
Okay, so I understand a little bit now, a bit clearer thanks to your explanation, what coercive control is and how's it been incorporated into these family disputes that we see.
Yeah, so it comes down to the definition of family violence, which has recently been amended to include coercive control. It previously didn't go that far. So I think, as I said before, there's been this in recent sort of 6 to 12 months expansion of coercive control or recognition of it, I guess, across the different legal jurisdictions. And that's come into family law very heavily because the court recognises through all sorts of things, but also social research science, that the effect of that on the family unit and therefore the child is really quite extreme sometimes. And the court really has to protect the children in those circumstances.
And with a finding of coercive control in a matter, how does it affect the outcomes and why does it matter?
Yep. Well, in that case I referred to of Takanaka, if I've got that right. In that matter, the judge in that case decided that because of the father's perpetrating of coercive control, that it was appropriate to give sole parental responsibility for that child to the mother and for that father to not really have much contact. So there was a lot of restriction on that father's time with the child because he simply lacked the insight to understand the impact of his behaviours on the child, and therefore the court said he was not safe for that child to be around. So you can expect a court to probably act quite protectively there.
So just as in a case of physical domestic violence, they're seeing coercive control as something that is really important to protect the safety and well-being of not only the other partner, but also the children, and it might affect your ability to see your children.
Yep, absolutely, 100%. That case had a few other factors in it, that the court said were not good for that child, but that was one big one. Yep.
So big changes.
Big changes. Necessary changes, I think.
Necessary changes, and for the better.
Absolutely, yep.
I think, not knowing a great deal about this before we started this chat, I think that's really helpful. And I think that our listeners and viewers will understand a little bit more about what is coercive control, why does it matter in a family court proceeding, and what are some of the outcomes that might result in circumstances where there has been coercive control. So thank you so much for enlightening us.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
And any of our listeners or viewers who would like to know more about coercive control, feel free to reach out to our OMB family law team and Aleena, or hit the comments section below and we'll endeavour to deal with those questions in a further episode. So, Aleena, thanks for jumping in on your first ever OMB Law Board podcast, and stay tuned for our next episode.